The Minecraft world record you're watching right now is impossible to beat, but so is this one, this one, this one, this one, and this one. You see, for an entire year now, Minecraft's best players have been claiming that this specific world record has reached a human limit, meaning this record is impossible to break without cheating, yet each time they've been proven wrong. This time, however, they may actually be right. Let me explain. Minecraft bridging is a very useful mechanic that has evolved tremendously over the years, and what started out as simply clicking fast has now turned into a series of robotic movements, perfect timing, and mechanics so advanced that you've probably never even heard of them. But it wasn't always this way, and for the longest time, bridging was believed by most to have already been pushed to the max with no way to physically improve upon any of the known strategies. At this time, the world record on the biggest bridging server in the world, mcplayhd short mode, was a time of 4.0 seconds. This time was achieved through the use of chain tab speed tellies, a strategy which is still the fastest to this day, but in the past year has changed dramatically. But this is where it all began, with 4.0, the first ever time to be considered the human limit. Fast forward to today, and the time has dropped by an incredible quarter of a second, leaving the current world record at a time of 3.75 seconds. This quarter of a second change, however, is the result of nearly 2 years of bridging development, thousands of hours worth of practice, repetition, and studying aspects of the game that would probably otherwise still be entirely unheard of. And the journey to reach 3.75 is truly remarkable. Minecraft bridging's largest servers started out with only one mode, known by the community as normal. This is the mode in which tele bridging first became popularized and where some of the biggest names in the community at the time, such as Dugal, Bedless Noob, and Krennic, learned the advanced in-game mechanics of bridging. Eventually, however, the server decided to release a mode called Short, which was approximately half the size of normal, and due to there being less room to make mistakes in such a short gap, the mode quickly became popular, often even more so than the primary normal mode. As players at this time had already managed to get a grasp on tele bridging and somewhat even knowing how to speed tele at this time, the short mode leaderboard was already quickly filled up with highly competitive times, and over the coming months, players would begin to approach the first ever perceived human limit of Minecraft bridging. As more of the community began to catch up, with players like Duga who had managed to get a grasp on speed tele bridging extremely quickly, many players began to realize that those at the top of the leaderboard had all stopped improving, each having reached the exact same time of 4.0 seconds on short mode using tab speed teles, a type of bridging that saves a single tick per speed tele as opposed to just holding the spacebar down the entire time. Up until this point, the direction for players to improve in Minecraft bridging had always been a very clear path, as simply copying the strategies that were being innovated on by the best of the best was enough to retain a high position on the leaderboard. But once everyone and their mother had mastered the tab speed tele, the entire community was suddenly at a loss on how to proceed. It was at this time that the concept of momentum was first introduced, something already fairly self-explanatory, but players in the community realized that if they timed their turns and jumps absolutely perfectly, they could shave off an entire Minecraft tick off their times, bringing the world record down to a much lower 3.95 seconds. And while the optimization of momentum in-game had barely changed the world record at all, it opened the floodgates for bridgers to start finding little imperfections and potential ways to break the world record well beyond 3.95. It was at this point in bridging that players stopped focusing on creating faster bridging methods, as it was common knowledge that unless you could pull off this absolutely perfectly, tap speed teles were the fastest bridging method out there. For this reason, the best bridgers in the world began to focus on a part of the bridge that had never seen much attention before: the clutch. You see, when a player does a 4-block flat tele into 6 chain speeds, it's almost always necessary to clutch by placing one single block on the end island in order to not fail the attempt. In general, and on most servers, this is the fastest way to clutch on the end island, apart from having crazy momentum and not needing to clutch at all. However, on mcplayhd specifically, the end island has a small hill on it, which players started to theorize about using to create a head hitter. In Minecraft, a head hitter makes your player move slightly faster than sprint jumping, but initially when I spoke to players about the possibility of this strategy, most of them seemed to think that it wasn't any faster. For months after I had suggested the idea to top players, it seemed that it had been largely forgotten about. However, eventually I started to hear the term being thrown around, and eventually this became the main strategy that players were using, until eventually Duga would break the world record and get a time of 3.9 seconds using it. And only a few days later, this was also tied by 2 players known as 3clicks and Geklo. After seeing players achieve this already deemed impossible time, I started theorizing about the possibility of this being the human limit for bridging, as it seemed that even the best bridgers in the world were completely lost for ideas on how to break the record past this point. One of the ideas I came up with at the time was the concept of a double head hitter, as I had learned that the single head hitter did not in fact save a full Minecraft tick, but rather a few pixels of distance. A double head hitter, however, would theoretically save even more distance, but every single bridger, including all of the tied world record holders at the time, said that this wouldn't get 3.85, as by the time you would actually place the 2 head hitter blocks, you would already be too far along to utilize one of them, rendering it useless. After this, the double head hitter was quickly disregarded and never utilized. Well, at least not until around a full year later. Foreshadowing. Around this time, 3.9 was also achieved without the use of a head hitter by 3clicks, and from there it became clear above all else that momentum was the key thing players could still improve upon. By optimizing their turns and keystrokes, players were able to achieve incomprehensibly minimal improvements to their in-game momentum. Players at this time began to focus far more on perfecting their momentum while simultaneously also starting to use new strategies such as 1.05 second 4-block flat starts, which was essentially just the insanely optimized version of a regular 4-block flat, which would normally take 1.1 seconds, conveniently around the same amount of time it would take you to subscribe. But with momentum now being the entire focus of the bridging community, players were literally going into replay mode after every single attempt to measure the exact coordinates of their players after each speed to calculate their momentum, and of course eventually this led to the 3.85 that at this point players already knew was coming. But after achieving the 3.85, the entire community was convinced that the human limit had been reached, a consensus that seemingly every top bridger agreed on, except that one player, a bridger named Crimzel, had suddenly turned off his in-game keystroke mod, hiding his strategies from absolutely every other player, and was suddenly starting to successfully pull off strategies and times that no other player could do. This strategy that Crimzel was hiding is now known as the gain momentum strategy, where not only do you perfect your momentum throughout doing the speed tellies in order to not slow down over time, but instead your player actually increases in momentum throughout the bridge. Using this strategy, Crimzel managed to bring the world record down to 3.8 seconds, now leaving the entire community in the dark on how to progress, until eventually he decided to share the strategy with others, and of course it didn't take long for other top bridgers like Dugal and Geklo to catch up, tying the 3.8. Of all the world records to happen below the 4-second mark, this was really the only one that players knew to be possible far before it happened, but the only real reason for this was that at the time of 3.85 being the record, every player in the entire community, including Dugal, the world record holder, said that
I don't know if anyone will ever beat 3.8 or like if that's even humanly possible.
But after reaching 3.8, the bridging community began to diminish substantially, with top players either quitting or going on to do moderately impressive things like breaking the Java speedrunning world record. For this reason, it wasn't until somewhat recently, nearly 10 months after the 3.8, that the bridging community would see a new world record. On April 1st, 2023, a player by the name of Stratoni Miner would shatter all beliefs around Minecraft's limits, achieving his second ever world record in Minecraft bridging as a whole, and his first ever on short mode with a time of 3.75. This completely thought to be impossible time was achieved by utilizing two new strategies, one being the double slab start, where the player first begins the bridge by placing blocks 2 blocks lower than the regular starting position, allowing them to have less airtime travel at the end of the bridge. And the second strategy, the double head hitter. That's right, I called it a year ago and everyone said it wouldn't work. But what makes this 3.75 so significant, and what's to say another player won't come along and break this record in the future? Well, according to Stratoni Miner,
I think 3.75 is probably the human limit because I can't really imagine someone getting 3.7. I think it'd be insane.
According to both Stratoni Miner and Dugal, the only possible way to get 3.7 is through the use of a perfect 5-block flat start, followed up with 5 perfect tap speeds and double clutch at the end of the bridge, something that both consider to essentially be impossible. So is this it? The human limit of Minecraft bridging? Only time will tell, but if I've learned anything from making 5 videos on 5 different human limits, the end is still yet to come.